Hello, everyone. George Mesa, Bass Player University. Welcome back. It's been a while since my last vid, a few weeks. It's certainly not intentional, but all things very exciting around here. New baby, newish baby, and lots of other action. So excuses, of course, but this is the reason. And I will certainly be right back on a once-a-week schedule very soon. So please excuse me for that. But today's video is going to be inspired by the email that I just sent out to the Bass Player University email list today, as a matter of fact. And it was about teaching, not about me as a teacher. I have been doing this for nearly 30 years. 28 years, almost to the dot. Almost to the day, I should say. So that's pretty crazy to even think of. But in the email, I discussed pretending to teach in so many words. And what I really mean by that is when you are focused on something, a topic, a technique, an idea, a measure of just one measure of music, as we actually discussed in a previous episode, it is one of the best learning tools that I found. It works for me, and I've seen it work for many others, where you actually attempt to teach it. Do I know this? Can I teach this to someone efficiently and correctly? And not just doing this in your spare time, just in your head. You have to try to actually say and speak as if you were speaking to a class, much like I am right now, or with a more direct, focused tone, as if you were speaking just to one person as a private student, that private student being yourself. I can remember so many times when I was working on particularly a theoretical topic or a technique topic or just a stylistic principle, funk, reggae, jazz. And I did my best to see, can I teach this right now? Usually the answer was almost a yes. And that gave me a chance, especially by saying it out loud. It gave me a chance to hear my own thought process. It's very common, especially when you're teaching yourself something. And that's different than, let's say, you have a lesson with me and I give you a concept or a few concepts or a song to learn for the next week. This is more of a anything goes. This works for any scenario. Can you teach yourself? Can you teach it to someone else? So let's talk about what I just did. Imperfections aside, of course, as you have, if you're already familiar with this channel, please do like, subscribe, and share. But I like to leave the mistakes, no matter what they are. It lets you know that I am a human being. It's not doing any kind of studio magic when it comes to really playing. And this is when some of your best ideas can come forward. Mistakes can lead to good things. I had an entire video on that, and I probably will make another video on that soon enough. So what did I just do? I had a very clear rhythm of 4/4. It was a very percussive, slappy thing that I was doing, but most importantly, I was using a very particular type of scale. Now, if you saw my last video about pentatonics, you will know that I wouldn't necessarily classify what I just did as a scale. I was using the whole tone scale as a point of reference, as a point of language, so to speak. Because the whole tone scale, as you may have just noticed, has a very, very particular sound. And it does something very particular on our frets, which I will discuss in a moment. It allows you to actually be very free with it and simply focus on your rhythm, which is a topic I just had in today's class at my Bass Player University. So I'm just going to kind of do my best to replicate what was happening. I didn't have anything written or planned. I did a little slide down and then something along those lines, right? A lot of whole step, 2-fret hammers or pull-offs. And you'll notice that these 2 fret patterns exist every other string. It's something like this going. And what I had done to keep things in a certain flair and use more notes, not because I had to, because I wanted to. I wanted to give a different color. Every 4th measure, I used the opposite whole tone scale. So by discussing and giving a little light on what I was actually doing, we'll go over the techniques in a moment. This is more about what I was doing note-wise. I was using the E whole tone scale. Sorry. And every 4th measure, I would use the F whole tone scale. So what happens is, instead of getting just one, and you can hear that scale is a very particular kind of tinge to it, I would do the next one. And this is what is very interesting about, see, am I out of tune? I think I just tuned. Let's hear it. Let's try harmonic tuning. Listen to that. Oh, baby, was I out. Apologies for that, but hey, give us a moment to use our ear. Give us a moment to tune with harmonics, which I think is a very much more effective way. I certainly have some extensive videos on harmonics and how they work. And I've discussed tuning with harmonics in some of my earlier free lesson videos. So when we use the E whole tone scale, we use 6 notes. How many notes in total do we have? In all of our music, in all of our Western music theory chromatic scale, we have 12 notes. If I'm using 6, I'm using exactly half of our notes. Move up 1 fret, and suddenly I have the other 6 notes. This scale is more of a theoretical concept. It feels like a Lydian mode at first. But then we keep getting whole steps. And eventually we get back to the octave or the tonic, whatever you want to call it. So we get 6 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're home. So much like pentatonic, it's not a full scale. But unlike pentatonic, this is a 100% symmetrical scale. And by that, already, it's only theoretical in nature. It doesn't really exist in the lexicon of scales, modes. This is a very, very different concept. And its use can be very varied, and we're not going into that right now. But what happens is we only get whole steps. Take a look at the scale only on the E string as I start from 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Every 2 frets. If I just do it by this, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Exclusively whole steps. If I do the other one, it's going to be 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. All the other notes. So rather than just allow this to be its own static color like I was for the first 3 measures, the 4th measure, I used the other one. And even though it's not using a real scale, even though we don't have a progression to play against, we don't get to the dominant 5 chord and come back home to 1. And if all of this is gibberish, then please join the Bass Player University. This is why I am here, or at least contact me for some lessons. I've been doing this, like I said, for almost 30 years, and I really enjoy getting the theory aspect out, along with playing the notes too. So let me do one example again, 4 measures, right? We're going to do a little rhythmic action here. Measure 1. Same rhythm. Different rhythm. And hey, there it is. I didn't even do what I wanted to do. I used the same whole tone every single time. Now, did it sound like that to you? Tell me, leave a comment. Did you hear that I didn't leave the whole tone scale that I was in? Even though I moved around and it may not have sounded totally coherent, Let's make sure I do it this time, right? All right, so that time, as I overthought every moment here, try to go all thumbs there. I only did the other whole tone for the final measure, just to give a little flavor. And maybe just once without slaps, so we can really get a good idea here. And here we have an idea where I did major thirds, because that gives us another whole tone situation. This scale can be very interesting when you use it around more than just the natural pattern you get by playing the scale all alone. You can get minor sevenths, you can get minor sixths, you can get major thirds, and you can get seconds. And of course, you can get tritones. So anything you do, any idea, let's just say it's any random, you can go up a whole step, another whole step, do the same exact thing, same exact shape. As long as you're in the scale, the same shape from a new note will work. No new modes to memorize, nothing. This scale can be very useful in a lot of different ways. Now, I may have gone well beyond what I meant to discuss with this phrasing that I'm doing, but that's the whole nature of this thing. I'm just going back and forth so you can get an idea of where my mind was at when I pressed record. I didn't know I was going to do whole tone. I didn't know I was going to slap. I just pressed record and started playing. And I thought, let me give the concept, teach myself, teach you what I just did. Can I teach what I just did? Because I think a lot of times people play a lot and they don't necessarily backtrack, reverse engineer, so to speak. What did I just do? Can I reproduce this? Can I explain this? Or was it just random frets? Did I actually not have anything in mind? As you can see, even though I did start from nothing and just start playing, I did know what I was doing, and I actually had a game plan. Suddenly, I had a game plan, even though I didn't have one initially. So, last but not least, what I was doing with the technique, for the most part, I ended up hitting on beat 1, and I gave 2 ghost notes for free almost every time. If you picture the snare drum hitting on beat 2, as we have discussed here many times. So I kept coming back to the low E after doing some random pattern in E whole tone. These 2 work here, these 2 work here, these 2 work here. You can hear that scale starts to have its own context, its own language. And every so often I would give a little pointer ring, which leads to a thumb very often for me. And this is a great way to start getting all kinds of notes going in different directions, because it can sound like a lot more than it is. You'll notice that when you hear at the end of the video, me doing a little slap thing, kind of just a random outburst of notes, but that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that technique very often. The technique we'll save for another time, I think. But overall, the language was whole tone. And the 4th measure, to give some tension, push, pull, give a dominant function, so to speak, without actually having one, I did the opposite whole tone, because there were actually only 2 whole tone scales in the grand scheme of things. Once you move up another half step, you're back at the other one that you started with. And that is the nature of a symmetrical scale. So I hope this gave you some insight into just what a random little thing like that can lead to. I could talk about this for another 2 hours and go into far more detail and perhaps clean up some of the mistakes I had made along the way. But I hope you had some fun with me. I definitely had some fun making this little recording for you today. And this is how it goes here. I come back, I give you a little something fresh off the top of my mind, and we talk about it. And as a teacher, of course, things are more focused on my end. But I like to give insight here at the YouTube page. I like to give some insight into just my demeanor, what I'm all about. So please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you do this. Let me know if you know anyone that does this, or if you've technically caught anyone doing this in the past. It's a very useful way to learn, is to teach. Can I teach this? Bring that into your next practice session. And I hope to see you at the next lesson. Thank you.